The original Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is a welcome throwback. Serving as an appetizer for the main course of Ritual of the Night, Curse of the Moon easily demonstrates that the classic Castlevania style still has plenty of life left in it, if given to the right people. Yet for as enjoyable as the game is, it really does just feel like an appetizer, perfectly pleasing, but easy to breeze through in an evening, especially if you have sufficient genre experience. Curse of the Moon 2 can't be summarized quite as swiftly. It's a more refined game, and while on the surface it seems very similar, the strong level design pushes the player in demanding but also interesting ways, making for an engrossing journey. As with the original game, the central mechanic of Curse of the Moon 2 is switching between the different characters you acquire, up to a maximum of 4. Things start out slowly enough, and the sequel does a great job of acclimating the player, with the first few levels specifically designed in a way that gives a sharp advantage to the most recently acquired character. Yet the game really starts to soar once you have access to the entire crew. Every member has an important purpose regardless of the level you're in, which makes it heartbreaking to lose access to them when they die. Zangetsu is the first available character and the most straightforward, with an average jump and basic horizontal attack. Dominique has greater reach in both her jump and attack, while also being more versatile, capable of attacking upward and downward. She can even pogo off enemies and lanterns, using this technique to reach areas that are otherwise inaccessible. Robert is the rifleman of the group. He's fragile but compensates with fantastic range and access to sub-weapons that can pick off hard-to-reach foes. Hachi is both incredibly strong as well as the most endearing. He's a Welsh corgi that pilots a magical suit of armor. The lovably ridiculous pup ignores certain hazardous terrain like slippery ice and spikes. He can hover in the air and even turn invincible, provided you have the required sub-weapon ammunition. Characters and their associated abilities feel more thought out than in the original game. While certain things are no doubt powerful, such as Hachi's limited invincibility, stages still take a great deal of dexterity and strategy to get through. This is particularly true when playing on the veteran difficulty setting, which limits the number of lives, and his classic Castlevania knockback occur when hit. So many rooms in the various stages reward a watchful eye and careful approach. By choosing the right character for any given situation, or even more specifically, the right sub-weapon for that character, you can make life a lot easier, and you need every possible advantage. The sentiment is only further enhanced in 2-player local co-op, which is a fantastic addition. Coordinating character switching with a teammate can certainly be frantic, especially at first, but that chaos really only adds to the fun. It also feels like a natural extension of the best part of Curse of the Moon 2, which is finding the right character for the job. Only now that responsibility is amplified between 2 people. Checkpoints are often very spread out, so having all your characters die can mean retreading a fair bit of ground. It's especially painful when a single fall can mean a character's death, which can be hard to avoid when enemies and projectiles are raining down from all directions. But even so, Curse of the Moon 2 doesn't feel insurmountable, a point made clear during boss fights. These gargantuan obstacles may seem extremely daunting, most notably later on when they fill the entire screen with things to hurt you. However, thinking through a fight and trying different approaches eventually leads to victory, pushing you to use your entire arsenal. You need a sound plan to survive, which is always a high point of praise. From a presentation standpoint, you largely know what you're getting if you played the first game, but that by no means is a bad thing. Curse of the Moon 2 does a fantastic job of honoring its retro inspirations, giving its world plenty of personality through detailed sprites. Enemies display this very well. A hulking armored monstrosity quivers before shooting a large cannonball from its back, and headless spearmen rise from the ground before charging forward for the kill. The soundtrack is also phenomenal, righteously wailing away in an infectious groove or creepily bouncing along. In so many categories, Curse of the Moon 2 doesn't just try to remind you of old games you love, but actively rises to meet that level of quality consistently. It's so puzzling then how weirdly padded Curse of the Moon 2 can feel. After finishing the 8 stages, the game promises a continuation of the story, and while that's technically true, the way in which it's delivered is largely underwhelming. Instead of offering new areas to play through, you go through the same stages with one fewer character. While things are more difficult and there are different pathways, you're presented with many of the same enemies and the same bosses with tweaks. The final boss is different as well, but a sense of weariness definitely creeps in. The jump in difficulty would be more enjoyable if it felt like you were uncovering new things instead of modified old things. After finishing the game again, you get another very limp ending with the promise of even more story. While the third episode has its own twist that's fun and exciting in its own right, you're asked to play through the same stages yet again, and by this point, our motivation to continue dried up. The promise of multiple episodes is an enticing one, yet the way it's handled here feels needlessly repetitive and uncreative. Those satisfied with playing through the 8 stages just once won't encounter this, but those who want to see the story all the way through, or feel like a single run is too short, especially for a sequel, will be left wanting. Even with the disappointing episodic format, if you're looking for a classic Castlevania, Curse of the Moon 2 is a largely excellent way to satisfy that craving. It can be grueling at times, but the gauntlet it runs you through is worthwhile to conquer. Considering there hasn't been a peep about any proper Castlevania games, hopefully there can be a lot more Bloodstained in the near future. Easy Allies reviews are made possible by generous viewers just like you. If you like what you see, check out patreon.com/easyallies to help us make more. For just $1 a month, you can gain access to weekly updates, spoiler discussions, and exclusive shows.